Morning, everyone. All right, there can be some excitement, that's okay. Now, I see some confusion in some of your eyes. You're wondering, who's this guy? I can clarify it for you. My name is Chris. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you guys. Now, I also see the wheels spinning in your head. You're thinking, it was a hard enough decision to determine, it's snowing outside, the roads are slick, do I come to church or not? Had I known Chris was speaking, probably would have partaken in the online campus. Only thing I can say to that, gotcha. You're here now, you're probably snowed in, so let's make the most of it this morning, right? Excellent. I got a nice surprise. In between first and second service, someone came over to me and said, hey, your friends are here. I'm thinking, I don't have that many friends. Wonder who's here. And they pointed me over. And actually, my wife's aunt and uncle are in town and here this morning joining us from Israel. So they run an international Christian ministry there. So I want to welcome them, and as well, Melissa's other aunt who just moved back to town. So we have Tom and Becky and her Aunt Shar as well. So we'll make them feel welcome. You know, as we're starting off this year, we're starting with a series, Start Strong. Start strong for the race ahead. And what we're talking about specifically this week is character. How we can start strong with character. Now, what is character? Character are the morals and values that we hold to, and those morals and values shape how we act and shape our behavior. It was interesting because earlier this week I was reading a story kind of about a World War II spy, and it made me start thinking about spies. They present themselves in a way, when we think about spies, we think about 007, right? Always in a tux, looking slick, has a cufflinks that's probably a laser, has like a pin that's a grenade or does something really cool. But in reality, spies are much different than that. You would be talking to one, and you would never know they're a spy. Because as cool as being a spy is, they're not going to say, hey, guess what I do? I'm a spy. Don't tell anybody. Because they act and operate better when no one knows who they really are. And that got me thinking, you know, if you ask a spy, what do? You know, maybe you're a little suspicious. I wonder what this guy does. He's going to tell you he does something boring like retirement planning or, you know, something along those lines. I'm kind of making all this up because what would I know about it? I'm just a simple retirement planner. So again, today we're talking about strong character. And we all know, in reality, what you see is not always what you get. We have a natural skepticism built into us, whether it might be about a person who you just met, who you're like, I'm not too sure about that guy, or maybe even a product, right? Those as seen on TV is going to make your life better. A lot of times they are kind of just junk. So the reality is that not only what you see is not always what you get, the truth is that what you pretend to be is not always what you are. You see, we all present ourselves in certain ways, and we present ourselves differently depending on the situation that we find ourselves in. We all have personal narratives. Now, these personal narratives are kind of how you act differently in different situations. So we all have maybe a way we act publicly. So we have our public narrative. And I'm not saying if you act differently when you're at home than when you're in public, you're a hypocrite. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. The social setting you find yourself in with social norms is going to dictate how you act and how you behave. If you go out and eat at Applebee's, you're going to dress a little different, you're going to act a little different as opposed to if you go and eat at a country club. Not that I would ever know, but I've heard stories and seen it in movies. It gets pretty fancy. In the same way, if you're in New York City having a fancy night out on the town, you're going to a Broadway show, you're probably going to put on a nice suit and tie, you're going to look a little more elegant, maybe polish your behavior a little. And that's going to be different than if you go down to Branson and see the Bald Knobbers Country Jubilee show, right? I know what some of you are thinking. It's mean. This guy's never eaten at a country club, but I guarantee you he has season passes to Bald Knobbers Country Jubilee. And that hurts a little, but that's okay. I have a PR and issue problem. So the public narrative that we see might be a little different than what I would call our relational narrative. The relational narrative is how you act, interact, and engage with those people who you're a little more comfortable with. So they're your close family, they're your friends. You're going to be, again, more relaxed, a little looser, talking to your spouse than you're going to be talking to your boss. Now, it's easy to point out the difference between the two. Let me give you an example. How many of you have ever been to Walmart when you see an epic child-parent interaction, right? It's not uncommon at all. You hear the parent is throwing as big a temper tantrum as the kid is. You might even see the parent dragging them by the arm through the aisle, right? And what do you think to yourself? You feel good about yourself. I would never talk to my child like that in public. But what happens when you go home? The kids, right? And the next thing you know, you find yourself dragging them by their legs to their room. Get in your room. So you're going to act different in public than you are in your own home. But there's another personal narrative that we need to consider as well, and that's our private narrative. Now, our private narrative is where the character rests and resides. It's where we store those morals and those values. And sometimes the morals and values that are actually inside our head are a little different than what we would want to present in our home, with other people around, or in public. Now, I realize as we're talking about character, there might be some of you in this room who might be getting a little nervous. I'm not here to come down on you. I'm not here to yell at you. In reality, there's very little I can do to change your situation. If you choose to not engage with it and walk out these doors, you're going to leave exactly the same as when you came in here. But I'm also worried about some of you who find yourself in a situation where you say, if you only know what I do or what I did, or if you only knew what has been done to me, even though it was not your fault, but you have the shame of it, you would reject me. I'm worried for you. You see, we think as long as we can repress these character flaws, maybe you would call it a life-controlling issue, maybe it's an unhealthy coping mechanism. We think that by tampering it down and pushing it down, that we're actually controlling it and managing it. But that's not what's happening. It's actually controlling and managing you, whether you realize it or not. If you find yourself in that situation today, I want to tell you and I want to convey to you, the transformation that you seek can only be found in and through Jesus Christ. For those of you in here today who have no hope, the hope is to be found in and through Jesus Christ. For those in here who say, I could never forgive myself, the forgiveness doesn't start with forgiving yourself. The forgiveness starts in and through Jesus Christ. Through him and him alone, there's redemption, there's forgiveness, there's hope, there's strength, and there's reconciliation. My hope and prayer for all of us in this room, regardless of what we're dealing with, regardless of what character flaws are, if we think they're small or if they're huge, that we would leave today depending on God with a plan to move and to come against what's going on inside of us. There is freedom to be found. When we think about maybe some of that more hypocrisy side of things, it's easy to see how we find ourselves or hypocrites in religion, right? In religion, hypocrites should be the last thing. You say you believe one thing, but maybe your actual life or attitudes, actions don't measure up. But think about it. Whenever you adopt a religion, whenever you come into Christianity, you're taking on a set value system. You're taking on certain morals, certain characters, certain values. Now, a lot of these are going to fit in naturally. They make sense to us. And when they come into our lives and we say, oh, that makes sense and I'm already doing that, well, it's easy to continue doing that. But all of us have some areas as well where it doesn't quite feel as natural. You might mentally know, oh, I probably shouldn't do this, but in reality, you can't stop doing it. So today, we're not talking about character flaws or issues that you can just quit doing. So think about, if you're a Christian, what are the things you've prayed to God? God, just take this away from me. And it's still there, and it's still there. That's an issue that you can't just stop. Let's just be perfectly honest. Oh, I can stop anytime? No, you can't. Because if you could, you would have a long time ago. So I'm not going to give you a list of here's the 20 things that I need to convince you shouldn't be doing, because we all know for our personal situation what areas we need to be confronting. Dealing with hypocrisy, again, it was something that even in Jesus' day that he dealt with. We have in Matthew chapter 23 where Jesus says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. So again, in this situation, we're not talking about do you act differently around your boss than you do your spouse? Are you more reserved? What we want to get to is the heart of what is holding you back. Where are you stuck? What is trapping you? Because again, just because it's in your head, we can't ever assume that it's not affecting us and it's not affecting other people around us. As Christians, our goal would be to have Christian morals and Christian values. Our goal is, since we are created in the image of God, we are to emulate the nature and characteristics of God. Where do we get our values from? It's from God. It's from Christ. Now, I've realized within the past couple of years that my brain works a little differently than most people's, and it's probably not a good thing. So whenever someone is trying to ask me to do something, tell me to do something, I have to know the why behind it, right? I have to understand the theory behind it. If you tell me, go paint that wall, don't say, just pick up the brush and start painting. I'm going to say, help me understand why we're painting the wall. Is there anyone else who can relate to that? Okay, good. I'm not alone. It's got to be so frustrating living with me where Melissa has to explain everything. Hey, go cook dinner. Why do I need to cook dinner? Yeah, she doesn't explain that to me. She says, get in the kitchen. So that's get in the kitchen and cook dinner. So that's a little different. So I say there are theory people, and then there are list people. A list person says, tell me what to do. What needs to be done? Give me a list of 5 or 6 things. Who are kind of the go-getters, the action? Who are list people? Yeah, a couple of you? Okay. In reality, even processing the way I do, I think that list people make a little more sense than theory people. But for those weirdos of us out here, let's start with talking about the theory of character. Now, the most important thing I think of when dealing with character is I want to get to the root and the heart of what is most important to Jesus. What are the few things that he says? Listen and pay attention to this. What are the summaries that he gives? One of these summaries is what we know as the golden rule. We've probably all heard it as a child. So when we're talking about the golden rule found in Matthew chapter 7, so in everything do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. What we think is a simple childhood lesson, in reality, is actually a lifelong challenge that most of the time feels impossible, right? What does Jesus say? How seriously does he take it? He says, for this sums up the law and the prophets. What is the law? The law, the Torah, is I understand I'm nervous here talking about what ancient Jews thought when we have our uncle here from Israel, but anyways, gonna recapture it. Let's skip this slide. Let's just go to the altar call. So what we find in the law is we have a system of rules and steps. Do this, don't do this. If you do this, then this is going to happen to you. And so we have a system in place that was really put in place to manage our relationship between us and God and our relationship with us and others. Then later on, you have the prophets who God sings along, who says, why haven't you been doing these things? He comes chastising Israel saying, you're oppressing the poor. You're coming down hard on the downtrodden. We need to take care of each other. You're not honoring me. And so God set out our relationships and how we interact with one another. And when we don't do it, he says, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. So it's amazing when you have, say, the Christian Old Testament, almost all of it could be considered the law and the prophets. If you have a summary of hundreds of pages and God himself says, hey, here's a quick summary. Treat others like you want to be treated, we should probably pay attention to that. It's not an easy answer and it's not an easy solution, because going and doing the self-evaluation and analyzation of am I treating others right and correctly, that is hard work. It's hard to be honest with ourselves, and it's always hard to do that. A lot of times it's hard to take the high road in these situations. Jesus took it a step further in Mark chapter 12, talking about the greatest commandments. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. What's important to God? What's important to Jesus? To love God and to love other people. Life is about managing relationships, our relationships with God and our relationships with others. Now, when we're dealing with theology, there's a lot of different takes out there on different issues. And I might have a take on sin that's probably a little different than yours. Not saying I'm right, but it's just how I think about it. A lot of people would say that sin is just a violation against the holiness of God. And so therefore his honor he's been offended, and that's why we have to deal with and take care of sin. I view it a little differently. I view that sin is a violation of ourselves and a violation of others. That we do harm to ourselves and that we do harm to others, and that the offense that God takes at sin is because he cares about us, because he cares about you and he cares about those around you, and he doesn't want to see you hurting or causing harm to those people who are around you. So what does he say? He says, love me and love others. Now let me take a minute to pause and put in a little commercial here. At Connect Church, we value relationships. Relationships are very, very important. If you're having trouble connecting, do as Melissa says, just connect. Just do it. What are the next steps? How do I connect? Number one, growth tracks. Third service. You're going to learn about the church. You're going to learn about who we are. We're going to learn about you. Join a ministry team. Right? We want you to come alongside us. We want you to partner with us. Join a small group. You need to be around people. These are settings. These are smaller settings where you can actually interact with people. In reality, if you're just sneaking in as worship starts, you sit down, and then as soon as the service is over, you rush out, and then you go home and say, I'm just having trouble meeting people at church. Help us out here, right? Give us a chance. Growth tracks, small groups, joining a team. This week, you have an opportunity to connect with people. 6:30 a.m., prayer and fasting. Come together with a smaller group of people. We'll worship together. We'll pray together. Again, we'll pray for each other. Come and be here with us. I do want to say one thing about fasting, kind of correct something that maybe some of you are thinking. Fasting, when we abstain from food in order to seek the Lord, we're not trying to manipulate God. It's not a situation where, well, if I punish myself enough, if I make myself hurt enough, then God will give me what I want. What we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to become dependent on something outside of ourselves. When we're hungry, when we're weak, we rely on that power from the Lord outside of ourselves. And so when we seek him during these times, it's easier for us to hear from him and to align ourselves with him. What's another way you can connect here at Connect Church? Wednesday night services. If you weren't here last Wednesday night, you missed an amazing service. Terry spoke about how setting up a system to remember what the Lord has done for you will help give you faith as you face crisis in the future. The Lord met my need here. I know and I acknowledge that, and I know he's going to meet my need in the future. Very powerful. Worship Wednesday night was mind-blowing. Come join us on Wednesday nights. Be here with us. Be a part and just connect with us. Life is about managing those relationships. I asked you before, who in here is a list person? Go ahead and show me. Okay. Don't worry, I didn't leave you hanging. Here's your list. The fruit of the Spirit. How should we act? Christian character. What are the qualities we should be striving for? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things, there is no law. This is another self-evaluation, right? How should I be acting? The ways I'm treating the people around me, are they joyful interactions? Am I bringing more peace around me, or am I creating chaos? How is my patience level, right? That's a hard one for a lot of us. Am I kind? Am I good? Am I gentle? Realistically, how much self-control do you have? That's a hard one. Self-evaluation is hard, and it's never easy, and it's also never easy to be truly honest with ourselves. But until you start taking a look internally and saying, in this area, I'm not where I want to be, then again, no change will ever happen. I want to kind of tell you, too, all of those scriptures we read were coming from within Christianity. We're coming from within the church. Hey, let's be good. Let's treat other people right. So what did the early emperor rulers think about Christians? So you have to realize that the Holy Roman Empire, they were executing Christians. They were killing them. So we have a letter from a man named Pliny the Younger, and he was writing to Emperor Trajan. And what he was asking is, are we supposed to be killing these guys? I mean, I'm okay with killing them, but I just kind of want to double check with you. So what would your enemy, what would someone who you're not close with looking at your life, how would they value you? How would they say you're doing as far as having strong character? He says the sum and substance of their fault or error was that they were accustomed to meet on a fixed day before dawn and sing responsibly a hymn to Christ. Sing responsibly, people, okay? With great voices come great responsibility. No, it's not that. There's an interaction in worship. We're meeting together, we're engaging, we're interacting, we're singing a hymn to Christ as to a God. So they're worshiping Jesus as a God. And to bind themselves by oath, not for any criminal purpose, but to abstain from fraud, theft, adultery, and never make false promises or refuse to carry out a pledge when called upon to do so. When this ceremony was over, it was their custom to depart and to assemble again later to partake of food of an ordinary and innocent kind. These are the enemies of the early church speaking about Christians. Hey, I'll kill them, but you know what? They're following the law. They're honest. They're truthful. They meet together, they sing a song, they worship Jesus, which was kind of their big crime of worshiping Jesus as opposed to worshiping Caesar as God. So for that, we're going to kill them. What kind of legacy do you have? What kind of character, not only in your mind, but your character as you live out? What does your reputation say? These life-controlling issues, these character flaws, are nothing but baggage for us. They literally do nothing for you. Baggage is not useful to us while we're still holding on to it. It's only when we release it that the benefits come. Think about the Start Strong video, right? We have the sprinters coming out of the gates, running as hard as they can. Have you ever watched training footage of a sprinter? Have you ever seen them when they're running with a parachute behind them? Strap a parachute behind me, I'm not going anywhere, right? Going to be slow. But what do? They run as hard as they can, as fast as they can, and they want to hold themselves back. For them, it's purposeful, it's beneficial. Because when they cut that parachute away for the same effort and energy, for the same output, they're going to go further. They're going to run faster. Our baggage is not helping us move forward. Our baggage is not helping us progress. It's holding you back. Regardless if you're willing to accept that, regardless if you're saying, no, it's okay because it's not a problem, it's not an issue. It's holding you back, and it's not until you can cut it away that you're going to finally experience the freedom that we have in Jesus Christ. Put the baggage down. You know, Romans chapter 5 talks about suffering. You know, when we're suffering, it develops perseverance. Perseverance develops character, and character develops hope. There's a natural progression in this life that we want to do and that we should be making. But are you stuck? Are you stuck at suffering? That's not where we want you to be, and that's not where Christ wants you to be. There's another benefit as well. There's a benefit that your suffering, your troubles today can help someone in the future. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all troubles, in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ." So that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves received. It's hard enough to be in a situation, to fight through it, to do the work, and to find yourself free. When God can look at you and say, I know what you're going through. I understand where you are. Come with me. It's going to be okay. But there's true joy that can come when you're on the other side, because when you put your baggage down, it is life-changing. The freedom that you experience is so freeing. It is so life-changing. So when you're on the other side and you see someone else stuck in their suffering, stuck in their troubles, you've been through it, you can walk over to them. You can put an arm around them. Say, I understand where you've been at. Come with me. We're going to be okay. And when you can walk someone through that, that's our purpose and our goal. The purpose of finally getting through the baggage, not only that you're free, but also to bring others along with you as well. So let me ask you the question. What do you want God to change in you? What are those things that if you had to pray, say, God, remove this from me, change this in me? What do you want God to do? Whatever the answer to that question is the baggage that you're holding on to. Think about how many years you've reinforced that. It's your natural, it's your go-to. I want to tell you, it's not going to just disappear overnight. But you can find hope. You can find strength. You can find a dependence on the Lord to begin dealing with this, to move forward with it. So how do we start strong in character in these life-controlling issues? The first thing we need to do is we need to admit responsibility. Now, in reality, a lot of these issues we deal with have been caused due to a trauma that we've experienced. There's a reason you're feeling the way you are. There's a reason you're acting or react the way that you do. For most of us, honestly, it's not our fault. Something has been done to you. But now's not the time for blame. It's time to play the hand that you've been dealt, the hand that you've been given, and you need to acknowledge, this is what I'm facing, this is what I'm up against, and I'm ready to take the challenge. The most important component is having a dependence on God. We'll talk about a couple of other steps, but if you do those other steps without a true dependence on God, you're not going to go anywhere. Just quit. Just stop. All too often we hear that. Well, don't do that. If you could, you would have stopped. For a while, you might be able to white knuckle it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to change. I'm going to be different. And you might see short-term success. But long-term, there's no hope without the strength, the wisdom, the guidance of the Lord being involved. Walk with the Lord. Ask the Lord to heal you. Ask the Lord to clarify in your mind. Ask God to change your twisted thinking on a subject. Ask God for the courage to make right decisions, to have the strength to move forward. There needs to be a level of intimacy that you've never had before. And for those of you who are saying, I've never really been able to have that intimacy with the Lord, start dealing with your biggest problem through the hurt and the pain of it, and I promise you God will be there. He will meet you there. You need to find support. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. To find support, you're going to have to be vulnerable, right? You're going to have to expose the secrets that we've had for our whole life, the secrets that we're hoping we can take to the grave, the secrets that we think are not affecting us but are hurting and causing damage to us and every person that we're around. Maybe you can go to your spouse or a family member. Maybe some of you say, I can't start there. Maybe it's too hurtful or harmful. Start with a friend. Go to your small group. Realistically, some of us in here need to seek professional help and professional counseling because there are issues that we're dealing with that we need the guidance from outside of ourselves. And I'm going to say this, it might not be popular this morning, but some of you also need to find a support group, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. You need to find someone who understands the path that you've been down, who can take you through, again, to wrap their arms around you, say, we're gonna be okay. And when you combine the support with the support and the dependency that we find in God, that's where the difference is made. That's where we start experiencing the hope. That's where we start experiencing the forgiveness, the reconciliation. The transformation you seek today can be found in Jesus Christ. Finally, we need to have small, consistent victories over time. At the end of the day, we admit responsibility. We seek the Lord. We seek help in others. But it comes down to you. No one can force you to change. And let me just be honest, you can't force someone else to change as well. If you don't want to change, you will never change. But as we put the time and the effort in our relationship with God, as we put the time and the effort with the relationship with others, we make the best decisions that we can in the moment. The best decision right now. And the best decision right now. And the best decision right now. It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging to confront character flaws. You're not always going to have victory. But what happens if you don't have a victory? Well, I want to tell you something. There's nothing magic about midnight. Best way I can explain this is how many of you have been on a diet and you crack on the diet? What does that mean? Free day, right? Hopefully you'll crack at breakfast so you can have a really awesome lunch, have a really awesome dinner, fit a few awesome snacks in between. And then at midnight, tomorrow, it'll be different and I'll go back. Midnight and tomorrow is a lie. Midnight and tomorrow is a false reset in our mind. What happens when you slip up? I'm going to reset right now. Not later, not tomorrow, because tomorrow becomes the next day, and the next day becomes next week, and then you don't even lie to yourself anymore. I'm just going to stay the way I am. There's nothing magic about midnight. I want to close tonight with a prayer. Some of you might recognize this prayer. It's become famous mostly because of its use in 12-step programs, such as Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous did not create this prayer. It was actually created by an American theologian named Reinhold Niebuhr. What this prayer says is, God, grant me the serenity, grant me the calmness, grant me the peace to accept the things I cannot change. How much of our time, effort, and stress is wasted on things that you have no control over? What if you redirected that energy that does nothing into something you do have control over? Would you see a difference in your life? Would you see a difference in your situation? God, grant me the courage to change the things I can. With your fault, with your character flaw, with your addiction, you can't control the fact right now that you have an addiction. You're in the situation you're in, but what can you control? God, help me to see what I can control and the wisdom to know the difference. As we're dealing with our character flaws, this is what reliance on the Lord looks like. God, I need your help to make the best decision in every moment that I can. There is hope. There is transformation. There is redemption. There can be reconciliation, but you can't do it in secret. You can't do it alone, and you cannot do it without the Lord. I'd invite you to go ahead and bow your heads with me this morning. As I pray, please pray responsibly in response aloud as I do. Jesus, I need your strength. I need your help, because I cannot do this life on my own. Provide me with the comfort and the courage that I need to be more like you. I acknowledge that you are God, and I worship you as God. I'm going to find my hope in you. God, please forgive me for the ways I've hurt you and the ways I've hurt other people. And as I leave here today, may it be with comfort in knowing I'm in a relationship with you. Amen.